A very good morning, everyone. Tashidele. On behalf of Venerable Geshe-la and the Tibet House staff, I welcome you all on the final day of the festival, and especially on a Sunday morning. We are grateful for and appreciate your presence and sacrificing your only day of complete rest, especially for those of you working. We are grateful for that you are joining us in the celebration of Tibetan culture, its rich heritage, and the deep connection it has shared with India for centuries. We have hoped to return the favor by offering you a rare glimpse into the invaluable legacy of Tibet and the different facets of its culture. From Tibetan medicine to awe-inspiring artworks, Tibetan food, and even greater food for thought. We hope that this festival has been successful in deepening existing connections and forging new ones between you and the legacy of Tibet. Our sincere and heartfelt wish is that you take the profound wisdom that is shared by our esteemed panelists and speakers and reflect on and find ways to practice it in your life. You can also watch the live streaming on Tibet House Facebook page, and we would be grateful if you could share it with the others who are not present here. So without further ado, I would like to request you to join me in giving a warm welcome to our chairperson, Dr. Hani Oberoi. Thank you. And welcome our panelists as well for the next session, which is a confluence of diverse disciplines and is titled Consciousness in Quantum Physics, Neuroscience and Buddhist Philosophy. The chairperson for this panel is Dr. Hani Oberoi, teaches at the School of Human Studies, Ambedkar University, Delhi. She's a psychoanalyst and a clinical psychologist. Teaching for her is most of all a relational encounter, a process that can potentially transform the being of the teacher as well as her students. Her book, Lives in Exile, exploring the inner world of Tibetan refugees, published by Routledge, is an exposition detailing the ongoing nonviolent struggle of 3 generations of Tibetans in exile. Since the past 2 decades, she has been involved in exploring Buddhism in depth and in-depth perspectives in psychotherapy for their healing potential. She has also been the Dean of School of Human Studies and Director of the Center of Psychotherapy and Clinical Research. So, Dr. Hani Oberoi.
Good morning, everyone. I'm especially grateful to Geshe-la for giving me this opportunity to be with all of you this morning. And as this is the 3rd day of the festival, I'm sure that very, very enlightening and enriching discussions must have taken place. I regret my inability to be present for the past 2 days due to some other competing engagements. As I always say in context of Tibet, I think Tibet is one of the unique sites left for us if we were to think about what is the future of humanity, and the struggle of the Tibetan peoples is exemplar in more than one respects. For today's session, as you would see, this is a very, very interesting session on the theme of consciousness, and consciousness across a diverse spectrum, ranging from quantum physics to neuroscience as well as to Buddhist philosophy. I think the theme of consciousness is as ancient as the history of humankind, and it has been explored from many diverse perspectives. In some sense, the tradition from where I come, which is of psychology, if we were to think about the self, then the self is a series of what arises in the states of consciousness. So, and Buddhism has had a long tradition of exploring consciousness in various manifestations, be they in the state of awareness that the Buddhist practitioner would be thinking about, or if we were to think about subtle consciousness, clear light consciousness, consciousness in states of intermediary between life and death, as they call as the Bardo states. So I think Buddhism has explored consciousness both as a phenomenological experience as well as a state which through empirical science. And that's where the second perspective comes in, the perspective of neuroscience, in which consciousness has often been understood as, the activities of the brain. But the brain is not just an organic organ, I would stress upon it. Brain is also very much cultural and sociological in its nature. We just cannot think of the brain as a series of electrical discharges, but the brain is evolving in a context. Brain is evolving in a culture. Brain is evolving in the life space of the person that we're thinking about, and I'm sure we will have reflections on this from the speakers today. The third perspective, which is of quantum physics, I think very, very interesting to think about how science had to change first before social sciences could change or philosophy could take a turn. So in quantum physics as such, the smallest unit, how is consciousness to be thought about in the electron, in the proton? I think these have been some deep insights that the 20th century has brought to us, both in terms of the content as we have emerged with consciousness, also the methodology to study consciousness. So also the relationship between consciousness and the unconscious, both to be examined, and Buddhist thinkers specify a lot upon how would we understand the dream, the dreamer and the dream. I hope we will have expositions on some of these themes as well. We have 3 speakers for today, and all 3 of them are bringing to us their respective viewpoints. I would request, I never like the role of the chairperson because it almost becomes the role of a disciplinary, sometimes, telling people how much of time you can have. But for the sake of completing the session, it is my request that each speaker remains mindful of the fact that you have 20 minutes for talking, so that at the end of it we can have some scope of interaction and discussion which we can open up between the participants and the speakers. The first speaker for today is Dr. Urmi Nanda Biswas, who has earned her PhD degree from University of Allahabad and is working as a professor in the Department of Psychology, MS University of Baroda since 2008. Dr. Biswas's broad research interest includes organizational behavior, human resource development, applied social and health psychology. She has been a Commonwealth Academic Staff Fellow. She is a recipient of UK India Educational Research Initiative Collaborative Delivery Award of the British Council. I welcome Dr. Urmi Nanda Biswas to come and share her views with us.
a very humbling experience every time I come to Tibet House. I am really, really, indeed, very much thankful to Venerable Gesila and Tibet House, and I'm really grateful to His Holiness for making it my destiny to be here. I feel a little nervous. I feel a little not humble, because there are so many people who are practicing. Being an academician, we do not have the hands-on experience in the field, and the real life exposure to how we take it to the diversity of actual real life scenarios. A lot of it is quantum physics, consciousness, and neuroscience. Everything together makes it very wordy and big jargons. Being a psychologist and having limited experience, I would limit myself to talk about happiness. In last 2 days deliberations, we learned that all of us want to be happy, and how happiness is seen with the lenses of psychology, neuroscience, and Buddhist philosophy. I have very limited exposure to Buddhist teaching. I have heard from many that they have got a chance to be the disciple of Gesila. I hope I will get a chance in future sometimes, but with my limited knowledge, this is a kind of preamble to tell you that if I somewhere misinterpret something, please be patient with me. Okay, saying that, this is a very recent phenomenon. His Holiness, with the Chief Minister, talked about making happiness a part of school curriculum in New Delhi from the junior KG to class 8. Very welcome step, but at the wake of it, when on 20th of March, when the happiness index was declared by UN, it is paradoxical. It's paradoxical because we fell on the rank came from 133 to 140. India is worse than Bangladesh, China, Pakistan, everybody on happiness index. What goes wrong? The whole world looks towards us being, having the potential to be happy, to make others happy, to teach others happiness. So let us see that what happens there when we talk about what are the indicators on which the World Happiness Index is based on. These are the 6 indicators on which the countries, 156 countries of the world are measured on. Income, freedom, trust. When I say trust, it was measured as corruption, basically, not having trust on each other. Healthy life expectancy, social support, and generosity. And guess what? I didn't get my hand. I couldn't lay my hands on the 2019 report, the whole report, but 2018 report says that we have such a bad rank because we lack in trust, social support, and generosity. So when we say happiness, happiness is what not is happiness. Most of us have been hearing since last 2 days that it cannot be, you cannot make it happen, you cannot, it is not money, it is not reputation, it is not this, it is not that. So happiness is a condition, a state that has to be, you have to cultivate it, we have to defend it, and we have to prepare ourselves to receive happiness. So how do we go about it? We are low 140th rank in happiness as a country, and a country is nothing but it is, we talk about the citizens who belong to that country, who behave in particular ways, and when being a psychologist, I believe that each one of us can make a small difference to the country as a whole. So when we intervene, we can intervene in these three domains, particularly maybe international relationships, relationship among countries, politics and all those things, body and mind. So when we talk about these three things, it is not easy to change the world and the body, of course, but what we can work on is the mind. We can work to make changes or bring changes in mind. Mind keeps changing. I won't get into the debate of about the mind and the memory, whether mind exists and how we bring the memories from the past life and all those things. That is, I have too little knowledge to establish that. But what I know as a psychologist, that mind can be changed. There are evidences that your thought processes can change your mind. So what I'm going to talk to you today is the overlap of the three lenses. One is psychology, the other is neurology, and the third is contemplative practices. When we talk about contemplative practices, we talk about Buddhist philosophy, we talk about Zen, Tao, and Hinduism, like we talk about mindfulness practices and all those things together. So when you're talking about these three things overlap with each other, and maybe if we work on all these three things together, if you have an appreciation of all these three things, kind of how they overlap each other, maybe it will help us to change our mind in some ways. So when do you feel happy? What happens? If I will ask each one of you individually, how happy do you feel when you feel that you do not have any control over your life? All of you will say no. Control, having a positive control over your life, your thinking, and your actions, of course, makes us feel happy about ourselves. And also, when we talk about happiness is from where happiness comes. It comes from the cherished moments, the memories that we have. There are, in social neuroscience these days, we talk about mood congruence effect and mood dependent memory. There are two theories which are being talked about a lot in social neuroscience, that when you are in a happy mood, you register things, you encode things which are positive. When you are in negative mood, you encode and register things which are negative. And also, if I'll take you, talk about in olden days when people will fall sick and the medical science was not so advanced, the doctor will advise, take the person for a change of place. Take him to Kashmir, take him to Varanasi. Why? Because when the paradigm changes, the place changes, you go to a nice place, nice ambience, nice thing, that creates a good mood, good positive experience. And when you are positive, that those positive emotions, those positive cognitions actually affects your immune system, the way your endocrine glands work and secrete hormones and chemicals. So that is the kind of thing behind that. Was discovered much later when we started talking about psychoneuroimmunology. But otherwise also, when we, as a social psychologist, when we talk about these things, we say that most of the business deals are signed in good hotels with good ambience. What's the reason behind that? Because when you're happy, you let go things. You let go you overall things. You do not become very critical. When you are in a negative mood, you become very critical, and the central processing system starts working, so you become very critical about the minor aspects. When you are in a happy mood, positive ambience, positive emotion, you let go, and thus becomes more overall and become more accepting. So saying that, I'll ask that how will achieve mastery? What will do? We have to have some understanding of how consciousness works. What are the limits of consciousness? We have been talking a lot about attention as psychic energy. We talked about ADHD yesterday. We talked about how attention should be monitored for doing away with distressful emotions in life. And the fourth is how we'll work with the self. Okay, so when we talk about consciousness has been, it's a very vast topic, ma'am. I won't even, dare to go into the details of it. But how it has been studied is that two types of things. It can be creature consciousness, which is about the being, the person, the individual, the animal, the creature consciousness, whether he is awake, what state he is, whether he is aware and all. And the other is the mental state and processes of consciousness. Okay, so when we talk about the processes and the state of consciousness, that is where we can work on to bring changes in the thought processes. Freud is, when being a psychologist, how can we be away from Freud? So as you look at the picture, when we talk about consciousness, so Freud talks about, we say that it is the tip of the iceberg, 2%, and the rest of it is subconscious and unconscious, 97%. And when you are talking about consciousness and making a happy life, so we have to look at the unresolved conflicts in your subconscious. Unconscious we cannot lay our hands on, but subconscious, when you put subconscious and conscious in touch with each other, what the hypnotherapist or hypnoscientist talk about, when subconscious mind can be in touch with conscious mind, then you realize the conflicts, and the conflicts can be resolved, and you can progress towards more positive emotions and feelings. You will have insight. There is a huge field of psychology subdiscipline which started emerging from 2000 onwards, which is known as a subdiscipline of positive psychology. And most of the people who work here, like Seligman and Peterson and Csikszentmihalyi, all of them work basically, to me, on the concept of Buddhist psychology. The concepts they are discussing, a lot of reference to Buddhist philosophy and psychology. So Csikszentmihalyi talked about experience called flow. And what is that flow experience? He talks about there can be order in consciousness, or there is a disorder in consciousness. When the consciousness is in order, it is called a flow experience. When all the consciousness is in harmony, symbiotic, all of it is in coordination, all of them are together, you experience a flow experience. You get engrossed in it. You enjoy it. You forget yourself in the moment of the flow. But when there is Disorder in consciousness, then it leads to psychic entropy, psychic death. It brings a lot of disorders, malfunctions in your personality, in behavioral domain, in cognitive domain, or in affective domain, in emotions. Flow he calls as the optimal experience. So if I ask each one of you, what has been the best moments in our life? They are not the moments when you are being given, maybe some of you will say that you are given an award or something, but those moments are those when you are relaxed, you are enjoying, you are receptive to the universal energy. You are one with the universal energy. When you have stretched your capacity to achieve something, you are consciously making an effort to achieve something, and you believe that it is worthwhile, that gives you the sense of flow, to be happy. And something that you make it happen. Like Robin yesterday talked about her experiences. I think I missed her experience of working with street dogs. All these things gives a lot of satisfaction of being in flow, enjoying your potential and making things happen. So when you talk about flow experience, we talk about also skills. We talked about skills yesterday as well when we talked about attention, how we'll monitor the attention. To monitor the attention, you need skills. You need to be completely absorbed in what you are doing. You have to have clear goals and should have feedback, and you have to completely concentrate on, not only concentrate, you should enjoy it. The best thing is that you should enjoy it, and you should have a sense. 5 minutes left, I'll do it. I'll go a little faster. So and when you lose your self-consciousness, and you also loss of consciousness of the self, and the time passes by, you are not aware of the time. Sorry. Oh no, it took it seriously. It just started running. Okay, so but happiness, from where happiness comes. So if it is all happy, then it is not happiness. Suffering has to be there to realize that what is happiness. So when you talk about happiness, it comes from suffering. If you have suffering and you can do away with the desires and suffering, that brings you the happiness. So now quickly, I think all of you know more about it than me. So when you talk about Buddhist philosophy, we talk about suffering being a part of being, and the suffering is brought by the human emotion or desire. And when you're talking about nirvana, it is a state where we are freed from the desire. So because I have to rush through, so we have two important components: karuna, Mahakaruna, and Nirvana. Nirvana is again, they talk about pre-mortal and post-mortal Nirvana. Post-mortal I do not know, but when we're talking about pre-mortal Nirvana, we have to have pre-mortal Nirvana to, when we talk about a complete harmony, balance, and equilibrium. So we talk about a lot about equipoise, equanimity, and being in harmony with the nature and the supreme consciousness and everything to have nirvana. So when you're talking about nirvana per se, we are talking about how to attain how do we become mindful? How do we realize the consciousness? And that's how Gautama Buddha talks about both samatha and vipassana and mindfulness, which is very close to it, together to realize it. So how do we do it? There are three major things: being with, that is mindfulness; releasing, let go; and replacing, let in. Okay, so when you're talking about mind and brain, so mind is where the flow of information comes with, and information is represented by the nervous system. We have talked about for last 2 days how the synaptic, kind of electric synapses and electric signals determine the memory and how it affects the memory, how it constructs the memory. And brain is important because brain depends on the nervous system. What brain works on comes from the experiences, or it is comes from the mind, the way you think about things, the way you experience things. There are 4 facts I'm going to talk about. So when our brain changes, our mind changes. Stimulants and action. So when you change your brain, when you give certain kind of nervous neuronal synapses, it gives to some kind of action and change. So how it changes the mind for better? Take a stimulant like of caffeine. With aging, your cortisol layer becomes thinner. So people who meditate, who practice contemplative practices, their cortical layer becomes insulated or remains thicker because of the practices. And you know that when you are intoxicated and all, it can affect the brain in a bad way. The fact too, as your mind changes, our brain also changes. So our mental activity gives rise to different types of neuronal synapses and activities, and it is fed to the brain. And this the temporal changes brings in the changes in the brain waves. It also changes the ratio of the oxygen and glucose. That's why stress leads to heightened glucocorticoids and cortisol, and chronic stress leads to many of the lifestyle related diseases that we know about. And also when your thought processes changes the flows of neurochemicals in your body. So you can see that is when we actually are very compassionate. I have taken this from Rick Hanson's PhD work, who has worked on how the brain changes because of contemplative practices, meditational practices. So you can see that nuns, when they recall the profound spiritual experiences, which parts of the brain, when we're talking about anterior cingulate cortex, how it is excited. And we can see that people, when they are meditate, their cortical thickness increases, so thus it defies aging process and it keeps you positive and agile. So the fact is that we can use your mind to change your brain, and your brain changes your mind in turn. So we do it by self-directed neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity is an area of study in neuroscience where we can change our neuronal, they talk about epigenic processes, your genetic process. The gene can be muted because of your experiences and regular practices of contemplative practices like meditation and mindfulness. Sorry. No. So the fourth thing is that we should taking in the good. How will take in the good? Give me just 2 minutes, ma'am. I am just close to finish it. So just having a positive experience is not good enough. So we need to engage in the positive experiences actively. And how do we do that? So we have to sustain it for 20 to 30 minutes, feel it in your body and emotions, and intensify it. Go a little higher than your usual capacity. So you have to experience it and you have to soak in it. So there are two terms now being talked about in social neuroscience. One is flow that I talked about, Zigzag-Mihai, and the second is savoring. So savor a small experience, get soaked in it. The sunrise, the sunset, the chirping of the birds, anything that you enjoy, the blue water in the swimming pool or the sea. So savor in the moment, with the experiences that you are having. So that will help you to take in the good insight. So these are the things where it results. So it changes the behavior action reporter, and so this is a model of broaden and build theory given by Barbara Fredrickson. She talks about how positive emotions change the action behavior reporter. So when you feel negative, when you start crying, it seems it's the end of the thing. When you are sorrowful, nothing happens to you, nothing occurs to you. When you're positive, you think how foolish I have been. There are such alternatives. So the moment your brain exercises positive experiences, it opens up. So novel thoughts, actions, and relationships happen to it. It broadens up. And once it broadens, it builds new resources. Once you are positive, your thought process opens up. It also builds new action processes, and thus it results in the positive long-term outcomes like job success, physical and mental health, and life satisfaction and everything. So by broadening our brain by positive experiences, we also build the outcomes which are otherwise not possible. So you can use memory to also heal painful experiences which are there. So memory, all the cells and small cells in your body has a memory. Your brain, everything that has happened to us has been restored. So which memory do you bring into your you want to live, that also affects your experiences. When you relive all those moments when you remember a traumatic experience. So nowadays we talk about not post-traumatic stress, but post-traumatic growth. So reliving the stress brings you more agony, stress, and everything. But when you think about it, you work towards analyzing it cognitively and finding out alternatives. It turns to growth experience. Okay, so this is what they talk about, Losada and Barbara Fredrickson. They say that suffering will be there. There is, negative things. We cannot, and negative things are like velcros. They just get pasted to your memories. It has so much 10 times more power, 100 times more power than the positive experiences. And positive experiences are like Teflon. It doesn't stick on. So now we have to change it. We have to make positive experiences like Velcro. So, and negative experiences like Teflon. Okay, so when we talk about this, Losada and Fredrickson talk about, so for each negative experience, you have to have much positive experience to undo the effect of negative experiences. And they have done a series of studies where they have found out the magic is about 2.9 is to 1. For each negative experience, if you have 2.9 positive experiences, then they will balance. So the negative experiences can be undone. The effect of the negative experiences can be undone. So there is a lot of work. If somebody is interested, can look at Keys' work, Keys and Hadid's model of wellness. They have worked a lot on health psychology, particularly in the framework of illness and wellness, and they have seen compared flourishing people who are flourishing with people who are languishing. So people can be ill. All of us can have illness, but some people who think they are ill, but mentally they look for positive emotions, they are resilient, there is growth experience and all, they are people who will flourish. The illness will not be affected, and then so the ratio comes from comparison of flourishing and languishing people. So I hope all of us will work towards it. And as Santideva says, that penetrative insight joined with calm abiding utterly eradicates afflicted states, that is negative mental health and suffering. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for a very engaging presentation. I'm sorry you had to cut it short. Yeah, but it was so rich. I'm sure we'll come back to it during the discussion, and all of us would have concerns that you would respond to. Your rich slides, we couldn't see all of them, but I'm sure that the important point that you're bringing up from that, what is a block and what is a flow, and how is the state of consciousness related to both of them, and how consciousness could enable the everyday experiences of our life. We'll come back to it during the discussion. The next speaker for the session is Ms. Pooja Dabral. She's enrolled for her doctoral studies in Buddhist philosophy at the University of Delhi. Her PhD research topic is Nagarjuna's philosophy of emptiness and Tsongkhampa's exposition, Descent into Prolific Periods. In addition, she has been a long-term student at Tibet House. She's also currently a part of a 6-year Nalanda Master's course in Buddhist philosophy at Tibet House. As a part of the above-mentioned courses, she has actively participated in rigorous daily debate sessions. She has participated in many national seminars and conferences. She served as a convener for the conferences being conducted at University of Delhi and other institutions. Pooja is also she's highly proficient in German, both spoken and written, and has taught the language for many years in the University of Delhi. I welcome Pooja to come on the dais and present her thoughts to us today.
No. Not working. Hello. Okay, thank you. Hello. Am I audible at the back? Okay. Good morning, everyone. So, thank you, Madam Chairperson, for introducing me. And I would like to start by thanking Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdul and Tibet House for organizing such a beautiful event and giving me the opportunity to share whatever little I know of Buddhist psychology and more importantly, to learn from all of you. So thank you very much. And as I start, so the topic of my talk is Mind in Buddhist Psychology. And as Madam Chairperson also said, and Dr. Urmi Biswas ji also said that mind is something which is studied, explored in many disciplines, and many different disciplines, philosophical systems, and also the religious traditions. They present this, or they describe this agent mind very differently, and also lay the emphasis on the need of understanding this agent. Also lay the emphasis on the need of understanding this agent, which we call mind. And also even current neuroscience, psychology, they are very much into exploring the human emotions and behavior. So now I would like to start with the question, why to study mind? If there is no purpose, no benefit, why should, if there is no So if there is no purpose, no benefit, then why should we even bother understanding? Is it audible at the back? Okay. So if there is no purpose, no benefit, why should we even bother understanding this huge topic called mind? So I would like to, as we learned from the first talk also that, we all aspire for happiness and do not want suffering. But then how mind contributes to our happiness and shunning the miseries. So for that, I would like to quote what Buddha said. So in Dhammapad, he said, mind is the chief and precedes them all. If with impure mind one acts or speaks, miseries follows like a cart following the ox. So here he clearly indicates that mind is of the greatest import. And why? He also gives the reason. So he says that the mind, if somebody acts or speaks, so all the physical and the verbal actions one does, interrupting the impure states of mind, which simply mean the negative states of mind, miseries invariably follow, like a cart following the ox. So if there is a bullock cart, and the cart will always follow the ox. So if we act with the impure mind, be it physical or verbal actions, the miseries are invariably will follow. So this is the summary. Now, if this is our condition and this is the way we are right now, so is there any way out, or we have to stay with it? So fortunately he didn't stop there. He goes further and says, mind is the chief and precedes them all. If with a pure mind one acts or speaks, happiness follows like a shadow that never leaves. So in the same way, mind is of the greatest import. Why? Because if with a pure mind, which means the positive states of mind, one acts or speaks, the happiness follows that never leaves. For example, our shadow never leaves us. In the same way, if we act with the positive states of mind, happiness will never leave us. So now this is a very good summary made by Buddha for us. But now to know the mechanism, and also in the first presentation we learned that there is something called flow experience, the experience of happiness. And also ma'am touched upon that how to have this flow experience, the experience of happiness where there is no obstruction of any disturbance, no obstruction of, in other words, no obstruction of any miseries. So why to acquire that state, ma'am talked about that we need to cultivate attention, we should be more conscious, more attentive, and then more compassionate. But then how to do this? And why, first of all? So what is the mechanism by which we can do this? So this is very important to know, and for that we need to know the 5 points which are very beautifully delineated by R.A. Nagarjuna in his book Mula Madhyamika Karika, which is the fundamental wisdom of the middle way, where he, in the chapter 18, he says, he gives the whole mechanism of the emergence of happiness or suffering. So in the verse, he says, through ceasing karma and afflictions, nirvana is achieved. I'll explain later. Karma and afflictions come from distorted conceptions. These arise from elaborations of grasping a true existence. Elaboration ceases through emptiness. So in this whole verse, he explains the whole mechanism by which the miseries emerge and also how undo that mechanism. So these are the 5 points. So to make it easy for us, I put them in the form of 5 points which are given in this verse only. So before we go to these 5 points, before I explain each of these 5 points, it is some important points. There are some important things we need to notice while I explain these points. Because if you notice all these points, then you get a very holistic picture of these 5 points. What are these 5 points? What these are talking about, and how these 5 points help us finally, and why it is so important to know them. So all this will become relevant to you only when you explore or when you think about these important points when I explain them. So the first point is mind and the object interaction, the subject-object interaction. As we know from the first talk also and yesterday's talks also, that the mind being the subject, it always interacts one object, and depending on which object it interacts with, either misery or happiness arise. For example, just to give you one example, when our mind comes in contact with our own mother as the object who has been so kind to us, immediately our mind eases and it flows with joy, which is a flow experience. And then if our same mind comes in contact with a nasty neighbor, then immediately the mind gets disturbed and it shrinks with the feeling of aversion. So we see that there is a mind and object, the subject and object interaction, that plays extremely important role in our experience of happiness or suffering. So this we need to notice, that while explaining the 5 points, which mind, depending on which subject it interacts with, what arises, misery or happiness. So this is the first point we need to notice. Now the next point is the different levels or the steps of this interaction. So some steps you will see they are very subtle, that even at our level we are not able to identify them. But unless we identify them, there is no hope that we can completely be freed of suffering. But there are grosser states also which help us to have the immediate benefit and like a symptomatic treatment. So these things we need to notice when I go from step 1 to 5. Now the third thing is the cognitive mind affecting the affective minds. So this is also very important, how our cognitive states of minds finally affect the affective side of the mind, which in turn give rise to the positive, which in turn drive us to take corresponding actions resulting in either suffering or miseries. So yesterday's talk, I think Dr. Ankit Goyalji, he made a very clear and beautiful distinction between what cognitive mind is and affective mind is. So I won't go into detail. So I'll go back to the 5 points. So these are the 5 points. So first is samsara. Okay, so when I say the word samsara, it simply means miseries. And who all are there who are in samsara? So it's very simple, that whoever has the misery is in samsara. Samsara does not have any other exotic meaning or any other place that we need to take birth to be in samsara. Anybody who has any form of misery is in samsara. So I think we can now judge where are we. And so first is the samsara, which is miseries. So how do they arise? These miseries, or the what we call sufferings, they arise because of our contaminated karmas, which simply means the actions. 3 kinds of actions: physical, verbal and mental actions. In simple world we call them karmas. So not the karmas, the contaminated karmas are the cause of miseries. Now next, they in turn arise from afflictions. So this is very important, because afflictions afflictions are also, the other translation is destructive emotions, and many of the in psychology, neuroscience, they deal with this area called afflictions, the emotional states of mind. So this is very important. I'll go into the detail later on. And then, which in turn, now it goes even subtler. We can see that this affliction or the emotional states of mind, which finally drag us to contaminated karmas, they in turn arise from inappropriate attention, distorted conception as inappropriate attention. So we talked about the attention. So finally, the inappropriate attention is the cause for us to have the afflictive states of mind, the emotional states which we don't like anger, jealousy, competitiveness, attachment, covetousness, all these mental states. Now they in turn arise. Now it goes even subtler, where Arenagarjuna says that even that has a cause. What is the cause of inappropriate attention? The self-grasping ignorance. So ignorance is simply something, is a mind whose apprehension of the object does not tally with the reality. Now, and there are several kinds of ignorance. For example, to think that there is a tiger in this hall is also one of kind of ignorance. But this is not the ignorance we are talking about here. This is a very precise meaning known as self-grasping ignorance, which means the ignorance that grasps at the intrinsic existence of the phenomena, or the independent existence of the phenomena. Just to give you the clue, when we see this prayer flag, how do you see them? Do you see them as so independently from the object side, or do you see them as they are coming from your own mind? How do you see them? I'm sure coming from their own side. This is known as intrinsic existence, and Arenagarjuna and Buddha said that this is the worst of the deception, which is at the core of all our miseries. And this is the final hope. And if we can eradicate this, if we can sever this self-grasping ignorance, there is a hope that we can be completely freed of suffering. It doesn't mean we cannot subside those suffering, we cannot undermine those suffering. Obviously, dealing the third level, which is also affliction, which the neuroscience, psychology, many of the disciplines are working on, is a great relief for us to have, immediate helps. And this is extremely important to do. Why? Because if you don't have, let's say, for example, somebody has a cancer, and because of that the person is having excruciating pain, and obviously the person should be taken to the surgery. But if you take the person directly to the operation theater, the person, you cannot even operate on him, because the person should be given first the painkiller so that the pain subsides. So it's like an immediate help, but it is so indispensably required, because if that is not given, forget about getting to the roots. So now, while explaining this, so how do it happens that self-grasping ignorance? So as I give you the clue of self-grasping ignorance, that it grasps at the true existence or the independent existence of thing, while they, including our own self, while they are completely empty of independent existence. They are empty of intrinsic existence. They are only dependently originated. And then this is a big question. Why? When they appear to us as so objectively real, in reality, actually, they are empty of objective existence. How can I know this? So this is the question which is dealt in philosophical studies, known as knowing the ontological reality of the object, which I can't go in detail right now, but this is extremely important, because unless we rectify that object, the mind is the self-grasping ignorance. As long as we are adhering to the object or grasp at the object as objectively real, the mind we are employing is the self-grasping ignorance mind. So we need to rectify the object in order to have a valid cognition, which is the wisdom of emptiness of independent existence. So this is the first step. Now the second is the inappropriate attention. When the ground is laid by the self-grasping ignorance that okay, the things are objectively real, on that, then inappropriate acts. How inappropriate attention acts is, inappropriate attention is a cognitive mind. Again, the first is also cognitive mind and second is also cognitive mind. The inappropriate attention is a mind which exaggerates the quality of the object. For example, For example, this mobile, this is just a 10,000 rupees mobile, and if you exaggerate it to be 50,000 rupees mobile, is this an error or not? Of course, this is an error. So this is called inappropriate attention, which exaggerates the quality of the object, and it can be negative exaggeration also. While my phone is 10,000 rupees, you see it as 1,000 rupees mobile. So this is also inappropriate attention. Now, when the inappropriate attention is there, what happens is that because of the inappropriate attention of exaggerating the qualities, corresponding negative emotions arise. For example, if you see this mobile which is 10,000 as 50,000 rupees mobile, the attachment to the mobile or a negative affinity to the mobile arises. And then what happens is, if somebody snatches it away or somebody breaks it, you may end up in fist fight. So this is what, so the next is, so first is you engage. So because of the negative emotions, the attachment, because that which in turn arose from where? Inappropriate attention, you have the negative states of mind, which in turn drag you to have negative actions, which finally give rise to the miseries. So this is how this whole process is explained, that how finally miseries come into being. Now he doesn't stop there. The good news is that he doesn't stop there. In the last line of the same verse, he said, elaboration ceases through emptiness. So elaborations of self-grasping ignorance cease through emptiness. So as I explained earlier, we, in order to eradicate this self-grasping ignorance from root, we need to have the counterpart, which is the wisdom. Wisdom is a mind whose apprehension of the object tallies with the reality. So the self-grasping is what? It sees the object as so independently there and so independently real, independent of our own mind. And what is emptiness? What is wisdom of emptiness? Is a mind who apprehends the object as it is. How does it exist? As empty of independent existence. It exists by mere mental imputation. So this is very important to know. And when we know this, the same chain can be reversed. The same chain of actions, reactions, and inappropriate attention can be reversed, establishing one into nirvana or absolute peace in simple terms. So when you abandon the self-grasping ignorance, it removes the inappropriate attention, which in turn eliminates the afflictions, the afflictive states of mind, which in turn prevents us from engaging into negative actions, and finally establishes us into nirvana, which is simply known as the absolute peace, or in other words, complete cessation of miseries. Nirvana is nothing else but a state of mind where there is no miseries, the complete cessation of miseries. So this is the mechanism, which is very important to know. So with this in mind, with this purpose in mind, for our both immediate and long-term well-being, in Buddhist treatises, the emphasis is laid on understanding the nature of the mind, its functions and its types, and also the mechanism. So after going into the mechanism, I would like to present the nature of the mind, starting by the definition of the mind. So in Buddhist treatises, actually the mind is an impermanent entity, as ma'am very correctly said in the first session. Mind is an impermanent entity, which simply means it changes momentarily. Just to give you a clue, my mind of 10 o'clock is different from the mind of 11 o'clock. My mind of 11 o'clock is different from the mind of 12 o'clock. So this is mind, and it is changing momentarily. So it's an impermanent entity. And second is, it is non-physical is nature, means it is not matter. So it will be interesting for you to know that in the Nyaya system, a system which is an ancient Indian philosophical system, the mind is said to be constituted of particles. So there are traditions which talk like this, but in Buddhist treatises, the mind is said to be not matter. It's a non-physical entity, but still impermanent, and it is composed of the temporal moments of the mind. So it's a composite phenomena as well as non-physical in nature. It cannot be experienced by your five senses. Now the next is the definition of the mind, which is the clear and knowing So it is defined as an agent that is clear and knowing. So it clearly shows that it has two aspects, clarity and knowing. So yesterday's talk also, it was explained beautifully what is clarity and what is knowing. Just to give you the clue, just to for those people who were not present yesterday, I would like to repeat it, that the clarity aspect of the mind shows, okay, for example, the example given is of the mirror. For example, when the reflection of the tree forms on the mirror, unless the surface of the mirror is very clear, the reflection of the tree cannot be formed in the mirror. In the same way, if I ask you to think about your mother right now, a very clear image of the mother will come to your mind. It can only happen when the mind is clear in nature. If it is defiled by the stains, you cannot see. You cannot have the image of the mother forming on your mind. So this is the clarity aspect of the mind. Now, the clarity aspect of the mind is also understood in the terms of the luminosity. What is luminosity? For example, now we all see this prayer flag. If there is no light in this room, can we see this prayer flag? No. Why? Because the light illuminates these prayer flags, and that's how we see them. In the same way, when the image of the mother is formed in our mind, the image of the mother does not come as very dark. It comes as very clear. Why? Because of the luminosity aspect of the mind. So this clarity aspect is understood in two ways. The clarity in terms of the clear being because it is freed of stains or defilements, and second, the luminosity because it illuminates its object. You see the object very clearly in your mind. They are reflected in your mind very clearly. Now the next is the knowing aspect of the mind. So unlike mirror, where the reflection is formed, but mirror does not know that the reflection is formed, mind is knowing in nature. When the image of the mother comes to your mind, you know that the image of the mother is formed on your mind. So this is the knowing aspect of the mind. So mind has these two aspects, clarity and knowing. So due to time constraint, I would just give you an overview of what are the classifications. There are different classifications of mind in Buddhist psychology. And as in her beginning remarks, Madam Chairperson said that there is a presentation of dream mind and then the subtle states of mind, 8 levels of dissolutions. All these are very well dealt in Buddhist psychology, which falls under the category of subtle mind and gross mind. I cannot go into the details right now, but these are the different classification depending on the specific characteristics of the mind. These different classifications are given in the Buddhist psychology, and it will be very interesting to know for you that except the first one, sevenfold division of mind, all other provide us with the exhaustive list of mind. What do you mean by that? That any mind that we experience in our own continuum, mental continuum, or we can think of in other people, should fall in either of the category. So any mind should be a sense consciousness or a mental consciousness. Any mind should be a non-conceptual mind or conceptual mind. So this is very important to know. Just to give you a very overview of sevenfold division of mind. It's a beautiful presentation of cognitive minds, and we have learned that the cognitive minds finally affect our affective states of mind, like afflictions or the positive emotions such as compassion, happiness, and other positive emotions. So these cognitive minds are extremely important. Unless we rectify them, unless we change them, then we cannot really change our affective minds. So the cognitive minds, there is a list of 7 cognitive minds, and you can see that when we go from bottom to top, they become progressively refined. From deceptive to direct, they become progressively refined. And this is something very, very interesting to know. Because, although we talk about, in Buddhism, the mind is, explained, the dissolution process are there, and the mind of the clear light, and then, the mind which goes from one life to another life. And also there are treatises which extensively explain how mind is different from the brain. Although they are very closely linked, but still mind is different from the brain. And finally, at a very subtle level, the mind becomes very independent of the brain. At a very gross level, at our level, both are mutually enhancing and mutually affecting each other and are dependent on each other. But at a very subtle state, which we call the state of clear light mind, the mind becomes freed outside of the physical brain. So that is also very interesting to know. But keeping all this aside, which is very difficult for us at the moment to experience, this is something we can all experience. We all can experience this. This is, if you know this part of the Buddhist psychology, you will find it so fascinating. The internal journey you will take after understanding these 7 divisions is different, is very fascinating. Just to give you a clue, the deceptive and the wrong consciousness is the worst of the mind. And actually, it can be applied to the subtlest of the object. But I would just give an example. For example, we learned that we all seek happiness and we do not want suffering. But if we believe that the true nature of our mind is defiled, we cannot take up this journey. So the deceptive mind which believes, so it is a deceptive mind that believes that the true nature of our mind is very defiled. So this is the first. Now you go to the doubting cause. So to make it refine or to make it correct, we have to take the next step, which is the doubting consciousness. Doubting consciousness is a consciousness which has qualms in 2 directions. So what you have to do is, for example, how does it happen? How does a consciousness gets upgraded from deceptive to doubting? How does it happen? So for example, you learn, for example, this conference. From this conference, you learn, oh, there were some presenters who said the true nature of our mind is not defiled. It means there is some hope. So this is, you get a doubt that it is doubt. Okay, the true nature of our mind may not be defiled. So this is where you have generated the doubting consciousness. But this is also just 2 minutes. So this is also not very helpful. You have to upgrade to the 4th level, which is correctly assuming consciousness. Just to give you a clue, some people, although they are very suffering or in an acute state of mental illness, but when you ask them, oh, what do you think? Are you going to be in this state forever? The person immediately says, the immediate response is, no, this is just a temporary state of my mind. This is not my true nature. So this is called, although the answer is correct, but it is on the level of assumption because it is not backed by the reasons. So what happens is, when some trauma or some very dark situations, or person is sees the very dark side of the world, person can, this assumption can simply shatter. So you have to upgrade from correctly assuming to the inferential cognition. Inferential cognition is a mind which sees the reality based on the valid reason. This is very important to know, because after knowing, okay, I have the correct assumption. Okay, somebody else also said that the true nature of our mind is not defiled. How do I know this? So for that, what you do is you need proper reasonings. How we can have the reasonings from text, from the learned peoples, and also from our own experience. This is the good news, because for example, if the true nature of our mind is defiled, then there should be no moment where we experience joy, happiness, or other positive states of our minds. The very fact we have all this mixture of emotions is a clear indication that the true nature of our mind is not defiled. It's just a temporary state. So now it is backed by a very good reasons, which is on the inferential cognizer. Now you have to upgrade it to the direct valid perceiver. What is that? So now up to the inferential cognizer, what happens? You always need a reason to, okay, my state of mind is, or true nature of mind is very pure because this. Now when you familiarize with this information to the extent that whatever happens, you have this conviction to the extent it becomes so direct in you, so experiential in you, so spontaneous in you, then it becomes the direct valid perceiver. So finally, how successful we are in our endeavor of shunning miseries and acquiring happiness, it depends on how successfully we employ the first 2 mind, inferential and direct. And finally, as I said, we need to sever the root cause, which is self-grasping ignorance. For that we need to cultivate the first inferential cognition and then direct valid perceiver with respect to emptiness, the wisdom of emptiness. Thank you.
So very impassionate, very She really took us to intricate alleys in Buddhism and the whole theory of the mind from there, and how we could again use it for the betterment of our emotional lives. Again, Pooja, we'll come back to you during the discussion. The third speaker for today's session is Dr. Dipeshwar Singh, who has done a PhD in yoga from Bangalore. His PhD work was on neural activity and cerebral flow changes in meditative states as defined in yoga texts. He's an associate professor working in the field of yoga and cognitive neuroscience. He's exploring the beneficial effects of yoga practices on mental health and brain functions using electrophysiology and neuroimaging techniques. Dr. Singh has published 24 research papers on yoga and co-authored a chapter on meditation in the progress in brain research. He's an active member of Society for Neuroscience USA. He has presented research papers in international and national conferences, and Dr. Singh has conducted several workshops on research methodology, scientific writings, and applications of neuroimaging tools and techniques in yoga research. I welcome Dr. Singh to the dais, please.
Thank you for inviting me for this presentation, and this I'm thankful to this Tibet House members who invited me in last moment. And can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So I'm thankful to Tibet House who invited me for sharing my views and the studies which we have done in the field of meditation and Swami Vivekananda Yoga University. This university is located in Bangalore, around 40 kilometers away from city, which is started by Dr. Achar Nagendra. He's a mechanical engineer who was working in NASA. He came back from NASA and started this Vyasa. So it was a journey from NASA to Vyasa. He's basically a scientist who started this thirst about how this meditation or yoga are affecting the brain functions, physiology, and several other, like quantum physics he spoke about very often. Yeah, how does change keep on changing? But my talk is basically related to how this meditative states, which is defined in yoga text, what are the different states they have defined as? As we know, meditation is a self-regulated process. It is not something which is you have to go. You have to create. You have to induce that kind of ability to go in that state where you can merge your all the thought process. You can slow down your all activities of your mind. You can slow down all your agitations of your mind and go in the deep state of relaxation. As you go in deeper state of relaxation, your mind is getting clear and clear, as my previous speakers have spoken about. How this mind is getting pure and pure when they are getting clearer as you go in deeper and deeper. So this is given two definition about when person is going deep understanding about mind, how their mind is getting clear and they reach at the state of bliss where you are pure sense of being. You are understanding your pure nature of your human as a human. And also these meditative states are helping to transform and simultaneously reduction of any kind of distractions in your mind. Whenever you are right now you are listening my lecture, but before that your mind was having some kind of lot of thoughts who will be going to speak about, and now you are listening, but still there are some kind of background or some kind of previous experiences are always interrupting the knowledge of upcoming or putting attention in one direction. There are some studies, several studies, not some studies, more than 4,000 publications are available in PubMed if you go in the scientific research journals, where you can see around more than 4,000 publications are available on meditation itself. Scientific publications where they have showed that meditation improves your perception, memory, and cognition. Though we have so many publications, but still, till today we could not able to understand the clear understanding how meditation affect the mind, how we reach in the alertful state of mind, how we reach in the state of deeper relaxation. So still a lot of studies are going on, and there's so many publications, and based on those studies, and now studies on even savasana and yoga nidra, they are also considered as a meditative techniques. So based on these outcomes, studies, they have classified, the scientific community has classified most of the meditation into three categories. One category is a focused meditation, where your mind is focusing, is looking at one object, and your mind is bounded with that object. That's called focused attention. Your mind is drive towards that object. Is it hiding the thoughts of that particular object? Now, second is open monitoring. Movement of your mind from one object to other is a non-reactive mind. It just whatever thoughts comes, let it come and let it go. Is a non-reactive state of mind called open monitoring. And last is a automatic self-transcending mind, where your mind is reaching at the state, you are self-inducing at the mind, where your mind is getting transcended state, the state of higher, where most clear state of a human being. There are very old publication where they have tried to understand the physiological changes when people are having two different meditative states. Why I'm saying still meditation techniques are not standardized. Why I'm saying, because the effect which we are bringing out after the assessments, like here the small discrimination of two different techniques like Brahma Kumari meditation, and both are having a meditation technique, but an Om meditation. Both are having meditative, both are taking you to the extreme relaxation and a full state of mind, but the physiological changes are different. If you see the first Brahma Kumari state of meditation, where your heart rate is getting increases, which is a kind of sympathetic arousal is there. It means the methodologies which they are using in that kind of practices, which is increasing the heart rate, and no changes in the breath rate. But other side, if you see, in case of Om meditation, where the skin resistance was getting reduced, which is representation of parasympathetic nervous system. I'm sure yesterday and day before yesterday you might have heard about all autonomic nervous system. I'm not going in detail, but Om meditation techniques are reducing your heart rate as well as reducing your oxygen consumption, reducing your skin resistance, which suggests that it is having a parasympathetic activity dominance. It means two different techniques having different methodologies, but having a different effects on the physiology, which is interesting. Then later further studies have been done on in SVSA we have done one study on Vipassana meditation, where this was studied on 8 years experience meditator on Vipassana, where we have looked at their attentional process using evoked potential. I'll explain you later about evoked potential, but here we have seen the Vipassana meditation improves, the 30-minute session improves continuously. ECG was recorded, and we have observed that heart rate was reduced. The attentional process was increases. If you see, look at the P300 is a discrimination task, where you have to give sometimes we give two kinds of stimulus. One stimulus is random, other is a frequent. Subject has to respond or count mentally the random stimulus or random events, and he has to tell. So that will create a activity in the wave pattern in the brain, which is reflecting the P300, the response which is coming from the brain after 300 milliseconds. That's called P300 in a discrimination task. That's also called oddball task. So we have studied and we have found there was significant increase in the attentional when they were responding for the attentional target or target events. The P300, the amplitude goes up. The neural recruitment was higher after Vipassana meditation. Further, Further, then after this study, we understood now meditation practices are affecting your thalamic region, it means your lower brain, and your cerebral cortex. In your cerebral cortex, and also it influencing our cognitive functions, is taking you attention or executive function or awareness. All these things are getting affected, influenced by yoga practices, by meditation practices. So further, we have studied another study. Okay, now yoga is influencing maybe like meditation. If person is doing meditation on Om or some other kind of object, if I give similar kind of other event or other stimulus, whether the same events, same changes are happening in the brain or not, then we have studied one is how this Om, mentally chanting of Om, can be different from the mentally chanting of one. That study we have done in 1994, where we have seen when the meditators, these are 8 years of experience again, these are 8 to 10 years of experience meditators, when they were chanting of Om mentally, there was significant increase in the amplitude, which suggests the more number of neurons were recruited. It means more number of neurons at the lower region. Mid latency represent the lower region. I will tell you later mid latency or potential, but it is a lower region of the brain which is getting improved. The functioning is getting improved. Whereas of same people on another day, when they chanted mentally one, there was reduction in the amplitude. Means more number of neurons was getting deactivated. They were not, because they were the effect of Om meditation was better. The neural recruitment was better. Still, we need to understand why this Om meditation. What are the components in Om meditation are affecting the brain functions? Still, those studies are going on. But almost whatever meditation techniques are available, whether you go for transcendental meditation, Brahma Kumari, Om meditation, Vipassana meditation, we have seen the final outcome is alertful rest. You are getting alertful after the meditation because of neural process are getting better. Now further, so however, these studies we have done on basically those who are experienced in meditation techniques. Now what about those who are never experienced or never practiced before any meditation? Can you ask them to come and sit in meditative state? No, it's not possible, because the person, as within 2 minutes he will start getting headache. Why? Because we have 4 states of consciousness, as we have spoken briefly previously, that consciousness, when we are in a wakeful state, our mind in different states, right? In morning it is having different state, during daytime it is having different state. So based on the Indian scriptures, yoga scriptures, based on Bhagavad Gita, Mandukya Upanishad and Patanjali Yoga Sutra, we have described the 4 states of consciousness. First state is random thinking state. Most of the people are in some of the time during the whole day they're spending in random state, where they're making the plan, where their mind is in turbulent, because mind nature is, as my previous speaker told very clearly, mind is having a random nature. Nature of mind is very random, which is why momentarily it is getting changed. So similarly, when your random thinking state, which is given in the Bhagavad Gita, Chanchalam hi Mahakrishna, it is mentioned that mind is having a random nature. And then when the mind is coming, then slowly you can modulate, you can influence the functions of mind and making them streamlined by giving them a series of lecture, like you are listening right now me. It's a stream of thoughts which is in one direction. So this is a state of ekagrata, which is given in Bhagavad Gita. Further, mind is described as another state, which is called focused meditation and effortless meditation. Meditation is always an effortless process. It's not an effortful process. You don't need to put efforts. I need to do meditation. No, you have to relax yourself, and you have to mentally aware of that object. That's what is the difference between meditation and sleep. Sleep is unconscious physiological rest, whereas a meditation is a conscious physiological rest, where you are alertful state, but you are conscious also. And then you go for dharana, where you are having a different attributes. For example, focus meditation on the symbol of Om or any kind of God, when you're looking at doing meditation on the attributes of those attributes, then you can see, you can go in the state of dharana state. But as you go in deeper and deeper and deeper state of meditation, those kind of thoughts are getting very minute. Very minute. Then you can reach in the state of samadhi, which was recently published in Progress in Brain Research, where we have gone from how these 4 different mental states reaching to the state of samadhi, and what are the neurophysiological changes that are happening, which is we have studied in our laboratory. Further, these studies, these 4 mental studies, we have done physiological understanding how these 4 different mental states affecting our autonomic nervous system, our brain functions. So we have observed, when we have seen the autonomic function, there was significant reduction. The parasympathetic activity was higher during meditation state, whereas the other states were having significant arousal. But in dharana state, arousal was there a little bit, but they were very much effectively, very much attentive. In both dharana and dhyana case, they were attentive. Now further, we investigate how this neural activation or neural activities are getting affected in these 4 different mental states: random thinking, concentrative mind, focused meditation, and effortless meditation. We have studied brainstem, which is having a latency of 0 to 10 milliseconds at the brainstem level. Then we have studied thalamic level at the midbrain. That the thalamic level is the midbrain, and then we go for further at the primary auditory cortex and secondary auditory cortex, how those are called long latency. Our latency is 200 to 250 or 280 milliseconds. Then we went inside to look at how these 4 different mental states are affecting our brain functions. So this, and what we have observed here, when the person was in deep meditative state, the same person underwent for 4 different conditions on 4 different days, and these sessions were randomized. And we have observed, when the person was in meditative state, the lower brain, brainstem and midbrain, it was suppressing the information. It was unnecessary information is getting filtered at the lower region of the brain. That's what after meditation we feel relaxed. Why? We feel more focused, more concentrative, because unnecessary information is getting filtered, which is represented as the lower brain. During meditation, it is getting suppressing your unnecessary information. Only selective information reaching to the cortex. And when selective information reaching to the cortex, neural recruitment was getting improved. So at the cerebral cortex, which is the major controlling of all activities of your body, we have observed the neural recruitment, the amplitude, the activity of the brain. The more neurons are free during meditation to process the information to the brain. That's what we have observed. The neural recruitment was better, as well as when they were performing the cognitive task. If you see here, when they were performing the cognitive task, you can see the amplitude is getting better after meditation. It means meditation having the potentials to reduce the activity, unnecessary activity in the brain. That's what it at the lower level, and increasing increasing the performance at a prefrontal or anterior cingulate or different region of the brain which are associated with discrimination task, P300. P300 is simple discrimination task, where the amplitude was getting, and they were performing better. Whatever they were performing earlier before meditation in 450 milliseconds, after meditation they could able to perform within 350 milliseconds, 320 milliseconds. That was change happened in that task. Further, we have assessed this in the fMRI. In NIMHANS, we have done this study where these 2 different states, how this dharana and dhyana are affecting the areas of the brain. And we have observed, when the person was in dharana state, we have seen activation at the anterior cingulate cortex and the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. These areas are associated with heightened attention. When you are attentive, when your attention is getting improved because of these 2 neural generators, they are processing the attentive responses. Further, when we went for dhyana session, we have observed there was increased activation of the left mid-frontal subcortical region along with the white matter. Also, there was right orbital frontal cortex was getting better. It was getting improved. These areas are associated with self-induced state of meditation also. One limitation was in this, we could not able to see activation in the insular level, which is associated with your self process, anything which is related to the self, insular cortex. Just I'm going to, yeah, thank you. And then further we have studied the same 4 different mental states in using FNIRS, functional near infrared spectroscopy, which is a new equipment. Why we have used? Because in fMRI there are a lot of limitations we have observed. Then we have studied the same 4 different mental states in the FNIRS, and we have seen the hemodynamic responses of the right frontal cortex, right prefrontal region was getting better. If you see during meditation, red-orange color, the hemodynamics means the oxygen consumption at the prefrontal region is getting better, is improved during the task also and during the meditation also. And this is the outcome which we have reported in further reported in Frontiers in System Neuroscience. Further, we have studied this, how this meditation techniques are different from the sleep. And sleep, how these meditators are regulating their sleep. We know that those who are doing yoga practices or deep meditators or experienced meditators, the duration of sleep is less. How they sleep around 4 to 5 hours and they are active whole day. Where a normal man, a normal human being who sleep around 8 hours, but still they are not feeling fresh in the morning. What are the components? How the efficiency of sleep is getting better? And what we have observed when they were practicing different. We have done this study in Coimbatore and then pyramid meditators and Asvyasa, where we have found a common outcome that when the person is doing meditation, they are spending more time in deep sleep, and their dream sleep is getting reduced. It's important, but it is getting reduced. Because of this, duration of deep sleep is more, the total duration is getting shrink. Whereas other normal healthy person or a stressful person, they're spending more time in dream sleep, and their onset of sleep is also very less, and they could not able to reach in the deep sleep state. That's why the duration is getting increased, and in morning they are feeling lethargic, dull and other. The quality of last is the subjective quality of sleep. The quality of sleep is better because of the micro arousal is less. Your parasympathetic activity is higher. So these are the few outcomes we have observed in the meditation. We have one technique called cyclic meditation in Asvyasa, where we have assessed in different attentive state, when the person is in different states of mind, and when the person is having stimulation and relaxation technique. This is a kind of stimulation relaxation where the person is reaching a deeper state of mind, where they are feeling a state of relaxation, and we observed that the performance is getting better. Further, we have observed the oxygen consumption when the person is doing cyclic meditation is a kind of stimulation and relaxation technique. It's a cyclic form of meditation where you have a small stimulation and more relaxation, a small stimulation, more relaxation, and we observed that this is improving your parasympathetic activity. Along with that, it is improving your depth of respiration, because of stimulation by yoga practices and relaxation by some kind of deep, like a QRT, quick relaxation, IRT, instant relaxation technique, and then we have a DRT, deep relaxation technique. I'm just skipping this slide now. Here there are few studies on this CM where we have seen there was increased performance. Meditation also improves your if you see here, it improves your selective attention. That's what is happening when you are in 4 different mental states. It's suppressing unnecessary information at the lower region. Then it's improved the concentration, visual scanning, and repetitive motor response. Motor area is getting better. In psychotherapy now, in different kinds of psychotherapy, this meditation technique is using as an add-on therapy, where meditation showed that changes in the stressful people and meditative people also can improve the strategy of coping from the stress. Also, meditation improves the reduce the psychiatric illness, and we have done one study on schizophrenic people, where we have given them some kind of hyperactivity along with the meditation technique, and we have seen the attention span was getting better, and their abnormal behavior was getting reduced. These are the two recent publications where people are using mindfulness technique in the psychiatric problems. These are very recent paper which is published in this month. Both papers are got published in this month, where they're using meditation technique for child psychiatry, where they're using different kinds of, now children are very hyperactive nowadays. It's very difficult to control their activities. So some kind of practices which is very useful to reduce their psychiatric problem, mental illness like ADHD, autistic, and anxiety. These are the very common problem nowadays in the children. So by the practice of mindful practices, it can be reduced. Further, another study where they have reported how this mindfulness techniques can reduce the schizophrenia, Parkinsonism, and other associated problems in the mental disorders like major depressive disorder or manic depressive disorders. These can be reduced by yoga practices, by meditative practices. So this is all about, I have just given a summary how this meditation techniques can be reduced all kinds of unnecessary unwanted activities in the brain, because it's suppressing the information which is crossing from the lower, because if your lower brain is cut off, then unnecessary information will not trouble you in your mind, right? Whenever we are getting aware about something is getting stress, then only you are getting the problem. If your lower region itself is suppressing the unnecessary information, automatically your mind will be more relaxed, more clear. You will be having more deeper of understanding about the object. That's what is happening. Avidya is the major cause of any kind of problem, root cause of any kind of problem. So if you can reduce avidya by stopping lower region, lower activities of the brain, easily we can understand the real nature of any problem. And once we understand, we can solve the problem by ourselves. Thank you. I'm sorry for taking more time.
Taking us through the entire landscape of how the mind is affected in a differentiated sense through the meditative practices that we do. May I invite all three speakers here, and we have less time left now, but if the organizers permit, maybe 10 minutes for questions and answers from the audience. So please keep your questions brief, to the point, and if you have any remarks or if you have any comments to make, please make them in a time-bound sense so that others also have the scope of asking. Yes, please.
My question is to Professor Biswas. And first of all, thank you for very informative and engaging presentation. No comments, straight question. You referred to a term called flow. And in the same context, I read about a term called zone. So what's the difference between flow and zone? And one more question. What is difference between flow and mindfulness? These are open-ended questions. Thank you.
When Zixang Mehai has studied flow, has been scientifically studied when he looked at the process how brain works during the whole experience. Flow happens in 4 zones. It is not that, it continues to be, I can show you, I think, the graph. So when flow happens, it doesn't continue to be at the same space. So when you are in flow, you move to a particular zone, and then it can go down and then come up, but zone is flow is the experience of the heightened consciousness and being with yourself, and your state zone can divide into different states. So it is flow is one part of the different journal experiences, I think. That is according to the graphs that I have understood. Then the second thing you're asking is the mindfulness. Mindfulness is
Flow and mind.
Flow, how you experience it. Mindfulness is a conscious effort to be here and now, to experience the thing, and to it's a kind of meditative practices. So mindfulness happens with conscious effort. But when in flow, when you're enjoying something, suppose I enjoy painting or something like that, so when I'm doing it, I forget myself, I merge with the experience. So that is a flow. So something that I like or love to do, that automatically I can get completely absorbed into it, and thus I'll lose the consciousness of myself. I'll merge with the experience. Mindfulness is a conscious effort when we try to practice it, enhances with the practice of it, to bringing ourselves to being aware of the experience. Making the awareness is the key component of it. We have to we have to make ourselves aware of what is happening with it, and to make a distance, not being to observe it without any kind of affliction, to observe the experience, to become aware about the experience without having any affective affliction. That is mindfulness, and it enhances. It can be mindfulness, as it is told, that mindfulness based meditation. So you practice it. The more you practice, to consciously make effort to be mindful about your experiences. So I think that is, it's overlapping, but they are different. As you see that it automatically happens when you are in a flow experience, and mindfulness is being conscious, making effort, being observant about you going through an experience and accept it. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll keep very precise. So my question would be to Pooja, ma'am. One question is very straightforward. There's some problem in formulating. So first I'll come to this lot and flow only, taken from ma'am only. That so we talked about lot and flow. So what about that neutral state? I mean, which is I could feel that there's some rigidity in lot. There is some freedom in flow. But what about that third stage of neutral, which is we talk about neutrality also. And second is that when we talk about nirvana, because it is philosophical, so if there is no subject object duality at that point, so what remains? Do we say that is it the absence of the object, or if the subject only remains, which is then which is in that context you say that mind is not permanent also, and because it is a confluence. Professor Shishiro is not there, so I wanted to bring that sense that that only mind is whatever is there. So where does the fluctuation comes from? Because in quantum physics we talk about that fluctuations in vacuum leads to creation. I mean, it's a very qualitative thing. So can you please elaborate on that?
So, ma'am, would you like to enlighten him on flow first, or should I start?
You can.
So what I heard from you, please correct me if I'm wrong. So flow is like the experience of, simply your mind flows. That experience is described as a flow experience where there is no barrier or obstruction of any afflictive state of mind. So as the first question was there, what is the relationship between mindfulness and flow? So I can say that if you have a better mindfulness, you can have a better better flow in that sense, but they are very different, the way ma'am presented. And now to the next question, where does this neutral state of mind falls in? So the flow is where, it describes as where the mind feels no obstruction and flows without any biases, or, simply, there is no obstruction, in other words. Whereas the log, if I'm not wrong, is the individual state of mind. So in those individual state of mind, you can fit in the neutral states of mind as well. Now the next question you asked is coming from the pure philosophical background. So basically he spoke about something which I did talk about the wisdom of emptiness, and then finally to uproot the self-grasping ignorance, we need to have the mind which sees the emptiness directly. This I mentioned. And then there is something called the non-dual experience of emptiness, which is where the mind and object, they become non-dual in that experience. So his question is coming from that background, so it could be little technical for others, so please bear with me. So actually with respect to that experience, we say, first of all, we need to know that, as I explained also, emptiness does not mean nothingness. It is the short form of emptiness of independent existence, which simply means, as I explained, that the prayer flags you see, how do you see them? As objectively real from the object side. But how do they exist? That they do not exist from the object side, they exist by dependence on your own mind. So this we need to explore, how that when they appear so objectively real to us, how do they in reality exist by dependence on mind? So this is a big area, this is a big question, we need to explore more. And from there, now the question is coming that you reach a state where the direct experience of emptiness is, which you also call the non-dual experience of emptiness, where there we need to, so this is precisely for the questioner, that there we need to have we need to know the frame of reference. So with respect to the person who is in the non-dual experience of emptiness, both the subject and object, they dissolve. But with respect to the person who is not in the non-dual experience, who are looking at this person who is in the non-dual experience, we have to know that there is a duality, that the mind of the meditator, the subject of the meditator is non-dual with the object. And what is that object? You say the vast expanse of emptiness. So from their point of view, so from the conventional point of view, you see the duality, whereas the person who is in the meditation, there is no duality as such. Both the object as well as the subject, they become non-dual when you have the direct experience of emptiness. And this also needs further exploration to understand what I said right now. So I think it clarifies your doubt.
I'll very quickly respond to the flow. Or you are asking that what is between flow and block. I was trying to get that presentation, but it is not here. So the thing is that when we talk about flow, we also talk about autolytic self. So we make goals for ourselves. When you are talking about flow experience, that is the ultimate experience when you are doing something and get immersed into it. But it is when you are attending to something, there is a goal and you are understanding it and attending. It is nothing. It is not that you always get absorbed in it. That is the ultimate experience, or that is the ultimate experience. So it is not either it is a block or it is a flow. Maybe the chairperson, Madam Chairperson, can talk about it more from the experience of clinical psychology. Would you, ma'am, like to? Yeah.
I think a lot of states, as you're saying, the neutral states of the mind, they are also coming up from the ongoingness of self. In the flow, in the experience of the flow, the sense of, as ma'am was saying, the sense of temporal awareness also may not be with us, because we are in the throngs of an experience, and it has, we only know ourselves to have undergone it on reflection. So I think experience and reflection have that dialectical relationship with one another. On the other side of it, when we are in a state of a block, if we think of clinical states, as she's alluding to, from a Buddhist conception, then we would think of them as blocks in experiences. Yeah, so the experience, the potentiality of experience has been blocked there, and that's why when Dr. Singh was talking about states of people in schizophrenia when they could meditate, yeah, so the block in the experience could be re-examined for them in a way that they could move beyond the block. And the same what she was saying in her presentation, the relationship between traumatic memory and memories which heal. So memories which heal, and so she brought up the fact that positive experiences, we have to savor them. We have to learn to savor them, because the mind does not fire, the human brain doesn't fire at the same level as for negative experiences of traumatic memories which keep haunting us back again and again. So neuroscience has also shown us that when we have negative states, or when we are abused, or when we have been violated in some sense, the mind, the human brain has a propensity to go back to the experience much more frequently than the experiences in which we may have been held as such. So I think block has meanings for us to understand that, we all say that we want happiness and we want to avoid suffering, but if we look at human psychology, I think we repeat suffering a lot. We keep repeating instances of suffering much more than going towards the experiences of happiness or joy in our life. So one last question, and I have got the notice that we must close the session then. One last question or comment, and then we'll close. Yeah.
To all the three of you, I have a mother who's very, very sick, perhaps in the last stages of her life, and I was wondering what kind of meditation would such a person be possible for them to do. Do you have any suggestion? Well, she's had a lung issue and overuse of steroid and antibiotics, and very enervated, very weak. So, sort of comatose. And I was trying to talk to her about things which she understands. Mind is very lucid. So, perhaps some kind of meditation is possible. I just don't know what may be the best.
Actually, as I mentioned in my presentation, that meditation techniques are having various effects, different effects. If you look at in terms of any meditation can be incorporated to any patient is not possible, because it is depend on these symptoms which the subject is having and what are the effects each meditation techniques are having. So in such condition what you have mentioned, don't the history of a previous history, what background she is having about the problems, we cannot suggest any kind of meditation right now. Yeah.
Actually, this has nothing to do with neuroscience, what I am going to share with you. There is a lot of work being done on elderly care, and there are different types of elderly care that people are engaging with. One of them is, kind of like you are saying, if your mother is in comatose thing and is in the, kind of needs care and everything. So a lot of, recently when I was visiting elderly care homes, there are a lot of, I was discussing with the care managers, and I would like to share what they shared with me. They said that when people are like in the comatose state and they are in the elderly care thing, so the ideal thing is that you don't have to ask them for meditation, because it can be contraindicatory as depending on the history of the kind of illness. But when she is in her, if she is in her consciousness, sometimes she can recognize you or the family members or something like that, or So it is good to bring something that she used to enjoy, or she is attached to it, or bring those memories, and that's what the care managers do. And they say that works, that brings smile to the face of eyes and the face of the people who are lying there. So that is one thing, to spend a little time and to bring those memories with her. I mean, that is, they have said that works. Thank you.
There is one study which they have done on coma patients, and they have given some kind of music therapy. By music therapy, they could able to retain whatever she loves, whatever the music she loves. You can play that music often and very often, so that will also help them to bring them back their activities. Yes, animal therapy. Yes.
Yeah, just one more thing I would like to add from my experience for your mother. I would think that, we begin our human life with touch, and many a times we end our life with touch also. So when mind as an active agent is not available to us, I think your presence by touching her would be very, very significant. So along with everything else, I hope that you can sit with her, be with her, hold her hand, and you may see that grasping is the holding, like a baby holds the hand. Last stage of life also, we continue to hold the hands of those who love, even if we can't recognize them cognitively speaking. Thank you very much for a very rich session. In which we traversed a long ground from how mindfulness in Buddhism could be used to cultivate compassion and happiness for us, to the understanding of what Buddhist notion of mind is all about from puja, and to the evidence that comes from, if we can meditate, how our biology and our psychology both interact with it. I thank all three speakers and the organizers for this session.
I would like to thank our esteemed panelists and chairperson. Now I would like to invite Sudeep ji to present souvenirs and khata to our chairperson and speakers.
I absolutely have no idea what I'm doing here. I in no way deserve even to stand with such distinguished people. But I'm very proud of, she's my classmate and my teacher. I'm very proud of her.
So first we request you to present the kata to our chairperson, Dr. Hani Oberoi. Professor Dipeshwar Singh, sir. Professor Urmi Nanda Biswas. Professor Urmi Nanda Biswas. And Miss Pooja Dabral, thank you. So lunch is served now, and the next session starts at 1:45 sharp. So please be here on time. Thank you.